All right, so today we're going to be going over news site part 4, just continuing our news site challenge. Today we have 2 objectives listed. One is to build a section page, and the second is to create an article search feature on the homepage. Now we're going to be using what we did in news site 3, where we implemented the API calls. So we used fetch to make a call to our backend server. In this case, we're just simulating a server that's running, but now we actually want to tap into those API calls that we're making. So we're going to build a section page so we get the section data for each type of news article we can have, and also have the ability to search. All right, so I already went through the initial setup just to save some time. I downloaded the news site 4 project, run npm install, and then started up my server. So that's where I am right now. So we're working on the section page. So let's kind of have a look at this. The section page we use to display articles that belong to a specific section. We're going to be routing to sections and then the section ID. And then we should be able to get the section ID parameter off the URL. All right, so let's go in order. It says create a section.js page instead of sources.pages. So let's go for it. Here's my code. Bring this down. All right, so we have source, we have pages. All right, so we have article and home page already. I'm going to create a new page component called section page.js. This is going to be a class-based component. Looking at my other components, yep, looks like class-based components. So let's add class-based component here. If React will let me. All right, class-based component, we'll call it section page. And this will render something. I don't know what yet, but let's read on. So we imported from React. What else do we need to do here? Define the route. We got to add a new route, and we need to render the section.js page. So again, it sounds pretty straightforward. Let's go do that. So in our app.js, we sort of have our main router. That looks like what we have here. And then we want to add a new route. So I'm going to copy my article route and basically do that for sections. We'll call this section ID and have a section page. But as always, since we create a new component, we need to import it. So we'll do that up here. We need section page and section page. All right, cool. So that was pretty straightforward. Let's see what's next on our list of to-dos. Within the section page, you want to utilize that API call that we made. So this one was fetch articles by section. And you want to retrieve a list of articles. And then once we have those list of articles, pass it to article list. So that article list component already exists for us. And again, this is just another highlight of React where we're able to reuse components. So we don't have to reinvent the wheel each time. The article list right now just takes in any list of articles and we'll render them. So for our homepage, we pass on all the articles that we get back from that server, and then that's our homepage listing all the articles. For our section page, we actually want to filter by section and then list all those articles. All right, well, let's get to that. So here I'm going to need a state value. So let's create a state. We're going to call that articles, plural. So that's going to be a list. And all right, so that's our state value. Oh, sorry, wrong components. When I go on our section page and create state value. All right, so we have something called articles, and that list of articles is going to be passed down to our article list component. So we'll have an article list component, and articles will be passed down to it. So it'll be this.state.articles. All right, notice that VS Code was nice to me and kind of auto imported. Well, I guess I imported a wrong item, so we want article list from components, article list, article list. Okay, so that should get us our article list component, which we're just going to pass it some articles prop, and that value is going to be this.state.articles. Okay, so let's save that, and then now we're going to actually want to get those articles from the server, but let's actually see what our page looks like right now. So if we did that, we go to believe it's section/ID.
Section is plural, I think is how you wrote it.
Thank you. All right, let's actually render something so we actually see something. So let's say H1, this is my section page. That works. Okay, still not working. Let's double check our routes. App.js, oh, never changed that. So I meant to change its sections. That's the harm of copy and pasting. I kind of went a little too quickly. But let's see if this gets, all right, there we go. This is my section page, it's a little large. Let me make that a little smaller. All right, so it looks like that's rendering properly. Obviously we have no data because we're not giving it any data. So here is where we need to make sure we're getting correct information. So how do we actually get the proper section? Can anyone tell me?
It's passed in as a prop based on the address.
Yep, so if you look at the article page, remember we did something called this.props.match.params article ID, kind of a mouthful, but that's where it's stored. We can do the same thing for the section ID because that's coming in from our URL. So I'm actually using copy this component did now. Hopefully I copy and paste properly this time. So let's go with render. This will be, let's call it life cycles. Not sure what other section to call it. All right, so here I'm going to paste what I had before from the article section and make sure I change it. So let's say this is going to be a list. So let's say, well, articles or section articles, keep it different. All right, so I'm storing that. I'm going to set that equal to section articles here. All right, so I'm doing a set state, setting my article state, which should be plural. So maybe I should copy it from the home page, but either way, I'm going to get a list of articles back from fetch article by section, not by ID, and I want to get this section ID. So let's actually break this down a little further. We'll do const section ID equals this mess. Makes it a little easier for us to read. And then section ID. All right, so grab the ID, grab the articles from our fetch. Again, this is asynchronous. So keep that in mind that we're doing this asynchronously. What else? We set the state and an error fetching articles. Okay, let's see if that actually works. So I need to actually import my API. So import article. So fetch article by section from find our API. So it's 2 levels above, 1 level above. Okay, so hopefully if I import that correctly, I should be able to call, call fetch article by section and get only the articles by that section. So let's make sure our data is good. Do we get any errors here? Looks like we did. Let's see what we're doing for article page. Section. Let's take a look. Oh, I bet. So we need to implement that, I bet, if that's not done for us. Nope, that's there. Fetch articles by section. Oh, need a plural. Always forget those. All right. Fetch articles by section.
Also do import.
The imports, yes. All right, looks like compiled successfully, so we're good to go. Let's actually see if that works. So we refresh here. We got section page, we got nothing. Let's make sure we.
Those section IDs are something like world with a capital W, Anchor. They're not numbers in the data.
Gotcha. Okay, that might be important. So instead of doing an integer, we should go to world, I believe. All right, there we go. Thanks for that help, Sean. So yeah, so we're not using IDs, we're using actual names for the article, for the section pages. So in this case, we went to world. If we go to opinion, we should get a list of articles. Opinion, that option, opinion. All right, so notice that the article has changed. So the first one is tentator. If we went to world, that article should not be there. Yep, so we got a different article for world. Okay, so it looks like that is working correctly. We could shut out national. That should be different articles. Okay, that looks good. Let's actually change our header quickly. And this can be, you know what? I don't think we need to make this a state value at this point, but I'm going to do it anyway. Section ID. Let's set that equal to empty string. And we'll conditionally show if. All right, so it's going to conditionally show something if there's anything to show. So this dot state dot section. Call it section. If that exists, show the section. So let's do this dot state dot section. Page. Put that in string interpolation. All right. I guess it's already. So let me show a second page or no section. Okay, so we want to turn a string in that case. All right, there we go. So if I do that correctly, I did not do that correctly because I forgot a comma. So now we want to set a state value, and we'll get to how to do that. So I guess I'm getting ahead of myself here. But my goal here is I want to show the section name here. So let's actually try this out. Let's go to, notice I get no section here, even though I'm in the national section. Watch what happens. I guess nothing's going to happen if I go to opinion. Nothing's going to change. Why is nothing changing here? As in, why is my item still saying no section?
It says option.
The answer is because I'm not ever updating my state value, right? My state value is never changing. So then one question is, getting the section ID here, what if I just did, this that set state, and then my section is going to be the section ID I get. All right, so this should change it. So let's put some comments, update section, state value, and then that's going to be fetch articles for section, and update articles. Right, so there, now we're actually updating the state when that comes in, and then we should also be updating the articles. So save that. All right, now notice we get opinion page, and then if we go to world, we should hopefully see world page. All right, there we go. Any questions on what we've done so far? Okay, let's continue reading on. So we accomplished these 4 tasks. We created a section page, created a route, fetched the articles, and then passed it down to article list. So it's going to be identical to the home page. I should have probably copied it homepage instead of article. But the next part we need to do is add section links. So in app nav, the current iteration only just prints out the items to the console. So if we bring up our console, that is option command I on a Mac. Go to my console. Let's filter out errors. I just want to see info messages. So if I click on world, notice I print out world, but I don't actually get taken to the world page. Or if I go to national, I don't actually get taken to the national page, but I print out national. So we need to add functionality there in our app nav. So let's get to that. I'm going to find my app nav component, which is under components, app nav.js. Put that here. Okay, so currently, if we look at our logic, it looks like we're simply, so handle click is what's getting it, and that's coming from props. So we got to backtrack here. So I go to my app.js. Notice here, all we're doing is logging whatever the clicked item was. This is the handle nav click prop. We're passing it a function that simply logs the item. but we probably want to do something a little more exciting than that. So that's where we're gonna change this item, and we'll make it so that we can actually navigate to this.
This has to be inside.
What was that done?
I'm sorry, I'm mumbling at myself.
Yeah.
I'll mute. I thought I was.
Gotcha. Thank you. Okay. Cool. So let's kind of get to that part. What do you want to do here? 1 second. Okay, so instead of just printing out the console, we want to actually link to something else. So what if we did created some link value? So let's read our README page. It says delete the handle nav click prop that's being passed to the app nav. Make sure app nav component is nested under router. So that's a key step. If you don't do that, you're going to get some errors. Remove references to deprecated method. Nav. Okay, so it looks like we're getting rid of this. We're putting the app nav within our router. So I think we can put it right here. And now that's in our router, we should be able to use something called link. So let's go here and let's actually read some documentation. Always good to do that. So if we go to React router link. All right, so again, pretty good documentation here. There's a link component that we can use. And this is similar to an like an A tag in HTML, but it's actually going to work with our router. So our router is going to kind of remember the history. It's going to update correctly. If we use the A tag, it's actually going to go to a new page. That's not going to work quite how we want it to. So it looks like here we just provide a link component and provide a to value to it. So that looks simple enough. Let's try to do that. So if I go to app nav, we're not going to get our nav props. So let's do something like, all right, so our href right now goes nowhere. This is an A tag, so I'm actually going to change this to use link. So do link and to, and the question mark is what goes here.
It should be, since you're doing the exact path, like a backticks sections and then like a string interpolation.
Yep. So we want to navigate to a particular path. So in this case, we want to go to section, sections, and then whatever our value is. So again, our nav items should have the correct item because we're just iterating through our items list, which we had before. So before, I think it was nav item, so $, and then we want to give nav item dot value. Yeah, that should get us to the correct section. And let's get rid of our href. All right, so we're obviously using something new. So we're using something called link. So we actually need to import that. As always, you can't just magically use anything. So in this case, we want link from React router DOM. All right, so this link component comes from the router. We save that. Let's see what happens. Save this. All right, so now if I click on world, of course, it's going to take me world. All right, so my URL changed. Notice, I don't know if you guys can see this, but my address bar is a little small. When I'm clicking on things, I'm getting to the proper URL. But notice that I'm still stuck on like the world page and my content never changed. So the question is, why isn't my content changing? Can anyone take a venture if I bring up my section page and maybe someone guess why it's not happening? So what I'm expecting is I get the section ID, then I go fetch articles. It should update. Why is it not updating?
Isn't it just running when it's mounted?
Yep.
Yes.
Sarah, that's yep, brownie points for you. So we are currently in component did mount. If you remember from our lecture this morning, this will only fire once in the life cycle of a component. So after the initial render, it will get this data and then render it once. So again, with React is not going to create your components over and over. So when I click on a new page and go to this link that I set up, so appnav, when I click on this link, it's going to go to a new page, but React is going to be like, all right, you're not using a new component. I'm still rendering the section component, so I'm not going to delete the one I have, so that's wasteful. So it's going to say, all right, you have a section component. I'm just going to keep showing the section component. Like for it, nothing changed internally. So this is where we need to make use of our other lifecycle methods. Does anyone remember how I could actually capture this update?
You use a component did up.
Yep. So components did update, and that's going to take in these values. Okay. So now this method will be called anytime either my props change or my state values. Again, remember, it's either one of those can trigger a component update. So in this case, our prop that's changing is the section ID. So that's automatically going to trigger a component update. So we just need to do all this logic in there also, but I'm not going to copy and paste that because that's going to be wasteful. So instead, I'm going to create a new method, say helper methods, and I'm going to call this fetch articles for section. Okay, make this async function. And here we go. All right, so I'm going to copy everything from my component did mounts. I don't think I need to make this async anymore. Put that in here. And now for my component did mount, I can call that. So I'll call it, what do I call it? Call it fetch articles for section. Probably shouldn't use the word fetch, so I'll just say update articles for section. This dot update. There we go. Now do the same thing in components did update. All right, so they're calling the same thing. So either time, first render or any update, section ID, this is going to load our section. Can anyone think of why this might be a bad design the way I have it as is?
It won't. It'll loop. You need to like check and compare because it'll see an update and just keep firing it.
Yep, Jack is wise to the game. So look, I'm not going to make any change right now. I'm just going to have this update over here. Let's see actually what happens. So I'm going to save this. Let's go to my page. All right, so it is updating, but my articles are not updating, so that is something I need to figure out. Let's actually print something here. So here I'm going to print console.log. I'm updating the articles. Save this. Go here. World. Not sure. There we go. Seems to be delayed, but yeah. So not sure why it's not printing out anything to console. Save that. Yeah, not sure what's going on.
So it's not running that function at all?
Let's find out. So I'm going to go back to my homepage. It looks like it's delayed. So yeah, there's something going on here. Let me actually just kill my page here. Bring up new page. But yeah, Jack was onto something. I just want to show what happens if we're not proper with our updating. All right, so this is our home page, nothing special going here. Let's go to a section page. So I'm going to click on world and then show the output. All right, notice, do you see this counter down here? I'm calling that function 800 times, 900 times, it's still going. So basically it's fetching the articles over and over and over again. So we are in an infinite loop right now. The question is why? And Jack kind of snuffed it out. But let's actually talk about why this happened. So this is bad. I obviously don't want to be fetching the articles like, thousands of times when the user's just sitting there trying to read articles. So I'm actually gonna, I'll let it run. Hopefully my browser doesn't crash or something. All right, the problem here, actually, Jack, would you like to explain it if you seem to have got it?
Yeah, so with your component did update, you need to include a check to compare the previous prop of like match param section ID with what it currently believes the section to be.
Yep.
And if those are different, then update. But if they're the same, then you can just stop, just continue.
So what's happening here, to maybe explain it, the reason this is happening is because we have two state values. We have both articles and section. All right. The problem here is when I call set state on section, well, that's going to lead to a re-render when that section updates. But I'm also setting state for the articles. So when we get to component update, it's going to update for both those cases, and they're going to kind of like keep feedbacking on each other. So that's not what we want to do. So yeah, these sections, this article list is going to be new each time. So sorry, I guess ignore the part I just said before. It's because the articles are different each time, as in it's a new list each time. So because we're sending it a new list, it's not actually going to compare each value individually. And so it's going to keep calling our method here. So yeah, we want to add a check, but we need access to the previous props. So we'll do previous props as our first argument. So again, this is from documentation if you guys want proof.
Ankur, could you explain a little more about why each time it's a new array of articles? Like what makes it new? Because it's fetching the same thing for each section ID, right?
Yep, good question. So I'm creating a new list here, but the data inside is identical, but React is not going to make that comparison. So what's happening here is that we have a list, let's say, X, Y, and Z. And let's say we create a new list, X, Y, and Z. Well, the items are the same, but these are two individual lists stored in two different locations. So for that state value, articles is saying, hey, I got a new list. I'm not actually checking the values inside the list. It's just saying, all right, this list is not the same as this list. So even though they contain the same items, they're two different lists. They're just two copies of the same list. But again, they're not pointing necessarily to the same data, right? So in React's eyes, it's going to say, all right, you're giving me a brand new list, which you create on line 23. You're setting that value here. So it's like, what's the old value? This is old list. So I should probably do this in comments. Old list is this. Let's say stored at memory location. I don't know. I'm making up memory locations. Usually they're more complicated. New list. Well, it looks the same, sure. But we actually created a brand new list. So this is stored at memory location. I don't know. Let's say it's stored at X46, right? So these are two different lists, and React doesn't really bother to check what data is in them. It's just gonna say new data. All right, let me re-render. Because that re-render happens, it triggers a render, which is gonna trigger a component update, and we go loop and loop and loop, because that list is changing each time we fetch. We could try to do that smarter. Like we could manually get to new articles compared against the old ones and say, all right, if nothing's actually changed, let's not call set state. But we're not doing that currently. So that's an alternative way to prevent this. But the easier way, I would say, is if we call, so we have props. Let me go back to my documentation. So let's go to components did update React. All right, see if we can find the page for it. Components did update. There we go. So again, this documentation page goes over all the lifecycle methods, but this takes in previous props, previous state, and snapshot. Again, if you don't want to deal with those values, you don't have to pass them. In this case, I do want previous props, so that's the only one I'm going to take. That's the first argument. Again, if I needed previous states, I need to provide previous props because that's where props can be stored. Again, this is just a variable name. I can name this prev p if I want. It's anything I want to name it, but by standard we call it prev props. And now I actually want to do a check. So I'll do if prev props dot section not equal the new props. So this dot props dot, what was it called? Match params dot section ID. All right, now it's going to check, hey, has your section ID actually changed? If your section ID is not changed, if they don't match, as in if they have changed, it's going to call this. If the section ID remains the same, we're not going to call this update function from our component update. So now we're no longer relying on the articles changing. Articles can change however many times it wants. It's never going to trigger this function again, because that function is the one updating articles. We want articles to be calling an update. The only thing that should be triggering our update is the section. So I should probably actually move this out. Now we need that for, right, never mind. So yep, this should protect us now. So let's actually go back to our browser. All right, so we got almost up to like 10,000 calls. Actually, with these two combined, we were over 10,000 calls before. But now if I refresh and start from scratch, if it will let me.
I had to restart my browser when I did this.
Yeah, it looks like browsers gave up on live. So bring up a new browser. Yeah, so there's probably some limit where your browser just kind of goes out to lunch and never comes back because they got overwhelmed with.
End of the browser life cycle.
Exactly.
Precisely.
So we birth a new browser here, and then we want to go to a section. Let's go to world. All right, so world page that loaded. Let's actually check our console. Make sure we're not continuously calling it. Do you have anything here? All right, let's go to national. All right, we're not printing anything. That's worrisome. Why are we not printing this? Let's.
Your pre-props has to match the same syntax as your this dot props. Like you're not grabbing anything with that dot section.
Thank you, Jack. You are a lifesaver. Yep. There's nothing called section on my props. Good catch. So this needs to be match that param section ID. Thank you very much. So then this will come back. Sorry, just too many undos. All right, here we go. We want that. And then, yep, that should be match param section ID. Great catch there. All right, so in this case, the question is, do I actually need this state value? And I think the answer is no. So that is, I guess maybe we do. So the reason I want section, the only reason I'm using section is for this headline here. So I guess I could do that from the props. Yeah, you're right. I actually don't need that then. So this can be straight up from the props. I don't need a state value. This goes into another discussion. You do not want to do something like this. This is usually bad practice. Here, I'm taking a prop and I'm storing it as a state. This is redundant data. So when we talk about single source of authority, this is, we talk about this in SQL. Same thing goes here. The parent is specifying what this value is. In this case, the parent is the router that's giving us this value. We don't want to store this internally because that is managed by the router. We don't want to manage it ourselves. So you should not create a state value directly based off a prop value. Again, there are exceptions to this where you might need some derivative value of a state, derivative value of a prop that translates to a state value. Again, you can do this. It's not wrong. It's just bad design, I'd say. So I don't need this section state value because I have that available through my props. So that was kind of excessive for me. So I just get section ID. I always have access to this .props.match params.section ID. So that should be what I want. All right, so I got rid of that state value. That was unnecessary. I'm just checking the props here. I don't need to check state values. If I do this, let's see if this works. So let's refresh. I'm still not doing anything. All right, back to the drawing board. So this .props not equal. Update, that looks correct. Let's actually print some stuff out here. So console.log. Let's check these values. So previous is going to be this. Prev. And then we will have the hopefully this function is getting called. So I want to call this current. All right, let's see what our console shows us, if anything. Successfully, let's go to opinion. All right, I'm not sure if I'm still in an infinite loop. It looks like I am still in an infinite loop. All right. Debug, back. All right, maybe a new browser. I'm gonna need to figure out why we're looping still. All right, go back here. Go here, React. Okay, let's go to world. All right, that worked. I'm not sure what my previous browser was doing, but all right, so yeah, updating my articles. Previous was world, current is world. If I click on something new, let's click on national. Notice that previous was world, national was the new item, so the current value. So then I'm updating articles. Let's say I click on national again. Notice I get the output, but I'm not updating articles because the articles, we're just assuming it's the same, right? So what's happening here is our component did update. This is still getting called, right? And we're printing out the previous and current outside of the if statement. But the if statement is what's protecting us so that we don't constantly fetch new articles if we don't need to. Again, this is all about efficiency. Like your app is still gonna, more or less work if you get the articles over and over and over again, but it's not proper because it's wasteful and you don't need to do it. Okay, so again, if I click on national as many times, I won't load it, but if I go to opinion, notice I got two different values. I got previous was national, current is opinion. So I'm updating the articles. Can anyone guess why I get a second output of opinion down here?
Because it is checking every time you re-render the page. It does the comparison. It's what we had to escape with that conditional check, but it hits the top of that on the way in.
Yeah, so I think Jack kind of got there, but yeah, so the first time this update is happening from the props changing. So that's when I actually go to a new section, like I go to world or business or national. That's from the props updating. So that's when component did update gets called because the properties changed. The second time around, this is because your articles actually changed. So when you update, when you get a section update, we call update articles for section. That also calls set state here. So that's going to trigger another render. But in that time, when we get back to component did update, those values match out because we re-rendered based on the new articles. And that's asynchronous. So we fetch articles. Whenever that was successful, we got the articles, sort them in our state value. And that state value is also asynchronous. So whenever our articles updated, that's when we got that rendering of the new articles. But yeah, that second time around, the previous matched the current section. So we didn't refetch our articles. We just printed it out to console, hey, opinion was the previous prop for the section and current, the current value is that. Any questions about component did update and why we had to use it here? Please ask. Again, lifecycle methods can take a little bit to get used to, but kind of just understand in this case, when I click on world or national, we're not creating a new section component. The same section component is being reused, but getting new values. So we want to use those new values and update our component appropriately. And that's why we use component did update. Because that's going to track, hey, are your props changing? Sure, let me re-render. Hey, are your state values changing? Let me re-render. So it does it for you. You just got to tell it what to do. Okay. Keep losing my browser. Let's see. There it is.
Which of those component functions have to be async?
None of them. So
because you're calling the async function above with that helper.
So this is a good question. You can have synchronous methods that can call asynchronous methods. So component did update, sorry, component did mount is a synchronous method, same thing as component did update. So in this case, it's going to do all three of these. If I actually want to put this like after instead of before, that shouldn't change anything. But what's going to happen here is these are going to be output even before this completes. And if you want to see that, let's actually see that here. Console.log hey I'm. All right, so the question is, are we going to see hey I'm here first, or are we going to see the output of the new section, the old section first? And the answer I'm going to tell you is we're going to see the old section and new section before this is printed out, because what happens here is making an asynchronous call, and that's going to wait, right? We have no wait here. So we don't know how long this is going to take, but our application is going to continue on. Again, if you remember our lecture from Friday, it's going to keep executing everything synchronously. So in this case, the console logs will execute before this console log will execute, even though it may seem like, hey, we're calling this function, shouldn't all of this stuff be done first? And the answer is no, because we have an await here. All right, so let's actually see this. If I go here, let's click on business. We've not clicked on that. Notice we got the old and new props here before hey I'm here got printed out. That's because these were executed before this got executed based on our asynchronous design. And so the answer to the general question was nope, You don't need asynchronous functions to call other asynchronous functions. So yeah, that's totally fine. So these do not and probably should not be asynchronous normally. Okay, let's take a look at our to-do lists for new site 4. So I think we got our links working. Hint, we're using link. All right, so this discussion kind of goes into talking about component update, which we kind of covered, where since the section component is not being recreated, it's not going to re-render, therefore component did mount. Sorry, it's not going to be recreated, so component did mount, it's not going to fire again. So since component did mount only happens once, we also need component did update to do the same updating. All right, so functional component, you're gonna have to use effects. Question, do you guys want to see that right now, or should we move on to article search?
I would ask that we finish all the class-based stuff before we move on to functional.
Fair enough. Okay, I like that. So we're gonna go on to the article search. So I'm gonna check this off. In fact, maybe I'll have a git save point. Let's bring up a node window and do a git.
My microphone stopped working. I said I feel like switching between class and functional is kind of a mind screw.
All right, we'll avoid it. I appreciate the feedback. So completed. What I complete? Adding section page. All right, so that's a save point. All right, we're good to go. I think it's probably a good time to take a break. So before we get to the search feature, let's take a 8-minute break. So let's regather at 2:05 and complete the article search part. I think that's only, yeah, that shouldn't take too long. We already have our API constructed. So let's do that after the break. See you guys back at 2:05. Okay, so we implemented our section page. So that was our first part of our new site 4 project. Now we want to do our article search feature. So again, we already implemented the API for this. So we should be able to just tap into that API call and get the data we want. So we want to add a new function and like search term, construct a filter. Okay, reading this data. Okay, so looks like we need to modify maybe our API call. So let's take a look at that. I'm going to go to my API. Let's double check what we have there. All right, so it looks like filters is null. So right now we don't accept filters. Otherwise, we want to set some parameter here. So is this new site 4? It's new site 4. All right. So here we're using the where clause, but we actually want to use, looks like title and I like. So I'm going to copy that in here. Not sure why this is like that. Okay, make sure I get this format correctly. Title, I like, and text search for, so we'll just call that filters, filter text maybe. Filter title, I like that better. Filter title, the $sign. All right, hopefully I got all that. So I got opening curly brace. There should be another opening curly brace, title. Yeah, so a lot of opening curly braces. I need to make sure we close them. That's 1 closing, 2 closing, 3 closing. All right, so this. All right, so I'm going to change this code a little bit just so I like it a little better. All right, so that's my URL. I'm just going to have a filter section. Let's get rid of the base URL. And filter URL. All right, so if we have a filter title, we want to use it. Else, we want to just return empty string, and then our URL is going to be our base URL plus filter URL. All right, there we go. So we're constructing our URL using our filter. If we have a filter specified, we add this filtering section. Hopefully that's correct. Do I need quotes around this? Might. All right, let's give that a try. Let's actually make sure we get appropriate data. Let's do a console. I'll do it later. Okay, so we have our fetch articles that now can take in a filter title. So let's try doing that for our homepage, right? So let's read what it's asking for from the homepage. So this is homepage specific right now. All right, so we do that. Homepage, it says add an input group. Okay, so I'm just going to copy their code. I'll assume they know what they're doing. Got a homepage. We're going to add an input group somewhere here. What is this input group component? I need to figure that out. So input group. What is? Where is that coming from? React Bootstrap. So we need something from React Bootstrap. That should have been installed. Let's check our package.json, see if we have React Bootstrap installed. Yep, we do. So we should have access to that input group. Let's import input group from React Bootstrap. Okay, not sure why my, here we go. All right, so we have this input group. We also have inputs, which is we're using input. All right, so we have two new components that we're getting from React Bootstrap. This is going to say handle search. And okay, so we need a handle search function. We could easily do that. Let's say handle caps lock, handle search equals anonymous function. Again, since this is a handler, we don't want to worry about the this binding, so it's easier to just do this. Okay, so we get an event. We want to use that event and do something with it. So say let's value equal t.target.value. Is that how we get it? Let's console log that. Okay, I'm going to call it filter text. Hopefully we get the right value. On change. So as we type, it looks like we're going to change that constantly. And then we want to call, let's see. All right, does anyone have suggestions here on how we could implement this? I have an idea. I just want to see what you guys are thinking.
Would we want to do this with set state so we could like just use the React like update re-render stuff?
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. So I'm actually going to create a state and call it filter text. And yeah, that's going to be blank to start. And so it's going to be similar to what we did on our section page. I'm actually going to create a new method for getting all this data called async update articles. And then that's going to be this logic that I had before in component did mounts. And component did mount will just call this.update articles. All right, and now I'm going to add a new method called components did update. Again, very similar to what we did in our section page. And that's also going to call update articles. But same issue that we kind of want to avoid that we ran into with our sections page. Our update is calling set state on articles. So that set state is going to re-trigger a component did update. We don't want to trigger an update from articles. We don't want to trigger an update from filter text because that can impact what list we have. So we do something similar where we take in prev props. And then that's prev props, we need prev state in this case. So prev state is going to contain the previous state value of filter text. So if we do a check of if prev state dot filter text, if that doesn't match our new filter text, that's the only time we actually want to reload our homepage data. So we want this dot state dot filter text. All right, so add a comment to make sure we're crystal clear on what we're doing here. Only get the article list again if our filter has changed, right? Because that's the only thing that could trigger a different list is on this homepage. Only if we filter stuff out, we want to show the items. Okay, so get articles, prev state, prev prop is not used, that's fine. Okay, so when they type, we want to update our filter text. We're going to do a set state here. Set state. And this will update this filter text item. So this dot set state, filter text, and that's going to be e dot targets let input. Want to see if I could actually get this console. So console the input value, make sure we know what they're typing. And then we want to set the input value here. Okay, so we're going to update the filter text constantly when they type, not when they hit a button. And then that should automatically get us the articles. So let's see if we coded this up correctly. If not, we might need to make sure we check our API because I modified that and make sure everything else is in order. All right, so I'm going to go back to my page, failed to compile. Input is not exported from React Bootstrap. All right, not sure where that's coming from. Okay, that seemed to work. I guess input group might have that ready. All right, so we have our business page. We want to go to our home page. So I'm going to navigate there. Okay, we got an error. Input is not defined. Yep.
It's because the tutorial is using React Strap, which has input, and React Bootstrap may not. I'm not quite sure the best way to fix it.
Maybe that was it.
Also added input as well to the input group. Need a comma.
Okay, so yeah, so I was using React Bootstrap, so I thought that's what the page said, but maybe I misread that. Oh, I guess I looked that up on the web, so I didn't really read that on our page. But okay, hopefully that fixed it. So we're using React Strap instead of React Bootstrap. That is my taboo there. All right, refresh. All right, so notice we have a search bar up here. And let's actually add some styling. So we could actually see that a little better. So input group, let's add a class. So class name, call that search bar. And then I'm going to add styling into app.css. And hopefully that should take care of it. So I called it search dash bar. Let's make the background color short, and then color will be white. Hopefully that doesn't look ugly. Let's see how it looks. Will it actually update? Nope. Won't let me style it. Search bar. Page. Search bar. Why won't it let me colorize it? This might be a case where the React Strap CSS is coming in later, would be my guess. So could we circumvent that somehow? Let's try importing app.css again. All right, so again, cascading style sheets, the last one imported is the one that gets precedence. Let's see if I just import that there. That's not where it is. It's // I'm just going to try this. I'm not sure if this will work, but I just want to get that colored. Nope, I must be using some other coloring. All right, looks like I can't change the color like I wanted. Let's punt on that idea. It'd be nice if I could. Okay, so we have our input group. Let's actually search for something. So let's look for a word that might be reused a few times. Let's just filter anything that has a V in it. I think V hopefully is not too prevalent. So if I type in V, nothing happens. That's not good. If I type in OUT, nothing happens. Okay, so let's check our console. Anything we didn't print out there? All right, we get undefined. So looks like I'm not getting the value correctly. Let's read the docs. So we go to React strep get input group input value. Good, so just Stack Overflow. Usually they're pretty helpful. That target value, that's what I thought I'm doing. So
You have e.target.input instead of e.target.value. Does that matter?
that definitely matters.
Oh, yeah.
It's in your handle search.
Yeah, it's in your handle search.
Yep, good catch. That is wrong. That should be value. That is why we had nothing. All right, so let's actually see if that fixes it. Thanks for catching that. All right, so let's type in a B. Nothing happened. We got the correct output, so that's promising. We're capturing the user input. So if I type in OUT to match this, we're getting that, but this is not updating. So we need to make sure we set everything correctly. So we're calling set state on filter text. That should trigger a re-render here. So let's actually print out through console.log. Let's just print out our state value. Okay. Type in OUT. Okay, we call this twice, looks like. What are we getting here? Filter text is OUT. We're still getting 40 articles. So it looks like our filtering might not be working correctly. I know why, because we're never using filter. That is, again, my bad. So we do this state.filter text. So we actually want to use this filter text value, because again, that's the only thing that's triggering our update, right? When that filter text changes, we actually want to use it. So that is probably the issue. Let's try this again. Okay, notice that some of these articles went away. I'm searching for AUT, which is in these articles, but if I type like XYZ, I should get no matches. If I want to show something when there's no articles, I think our article list can handle that. Let's do that quickly, just for fun. I'm gonna go to my article list. And all right, so if nothing is in articles, I want to show nothing. So I'm going to change my article list just for fun. Again, you don't have to, but I want to. So I'm going to do render article list, articles. Let's make that regular function. It's going to have this logic in it. But I'm going to quickly check. So it's a return. That stuff. All right, I'm going to break this up apart a little bit more. Let's take this out. And then I want to say let elements equal let, return elements. Okay, and here I could just do a quick check of if articles dot length. What is that? This dot props, right? This dot props dot article. If you guys can bear with me while I just add this new thing. All right, so if this dot prop dot length is equal to 0, then let's print out, let's just return a paragraph tag that says no articles. Okay, so that will be our return if our article is empty. Otherwise, we want to return our elements. And then here we need to call render articles. That's what I called it. Okay, I need a this dot props. There. Okay, that should take care of it. Let's see if that works. All right, notice we got no articles found, exactly what I wanted. If I type something like OUT, again, all these articles should have an AUT, sorry, not OUT, AUT num. Yep, that one does, so they all seem to match. If I type in a V, yep, that has a V, that has a V, that has a V. Yep, they all seem to have Vs, so it looks like it's working. Cool, so that didn't take too much effort. Had a couple typos, but you guys kind of helped me out there, so thank you. Any questions on using the filter text capability?
Does it ignore spaces?
Does it ignore spaces? Good question. Let's give it a try. So if I type OUT space, 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 it looks like it does. Why does the period get there? That's annoying. Nope. Looks like it does not ignore spaces. So yep, that's a good kind of suggestion for any user input. Users might have random spaces. Usually it's good to trim white space unless it makes sense. So usually, you know, they're not gonna be searching for something with a bunch of spaces in them. So you might want to just chop off extra white space. That'll make it a little more user friendly, but hopefully users can figure out how to use the search bar. Any questions on new site 4?
Yeah, it kind of looks like a mobile feature. Normally when you click space twice, it inserts a period.
Yeah, that seems to
So
be,
it's weird seeing that on desktop.
yeah, it might be just from the input item that I'm using. Not too familiar with that. Okay, so we did handle search. That's done. We did something. All right, so these are functional components. Yep, functional components. Okay, so here I have an extended challenge for you guys, just some food for thought for redesigning. So currently we added our search bar to our homepage, but if I go to world, notice that search page goes away. There's no reason in my mind why I shouldn't be able to search on this page also. It's essentially what my homepage is, just a different component with similar data, right? So extended challenge number 1 is, can you figure out how to redesign this yourself so that if I go to any of these section pages, I have the same search capability? Obviously, one way to do it is just copy and paste the code. That's the wrong way to do it, I'd say. You want to reuse this functionality. So this could be hint, another component or nested within some other component. I'll leave it to you guys to kind of figure that out on your own. But we want the search bar as an extended challenge to be available on these pages also, right? Because we should be able to search. So that's extended challenge number 1. Number 2, so this is something I added, I think, recently. Think about our design and think about efficiency. So for web pages, some of the most time-intensive processes are getting data from an external site. So in this case, we're fetching from a server. That's relatively slow compared to other operations in our application. So can you think of a way to improve the efficiency of the filtering function, but keeping it working the same way? As in, if I filter something, I should get the same results. There should be no shortcuts, like you're not gonna be caching data or anything. But can you kind of think of a way to change our design that we implemented here so that we're actually making fewer API calls? So kind of read these extended challenges. I would encourage you guys to do them because that'll just test your React knowledge. Instead of us just walking through all this, see if you can kind of adjust our challenge to meet those goals. Okay, so we completed new site 4, but next up is, can we make this functional? And the answer is yes, but how do we actually do that? So I'm going to create a new branch. So let's go to our bash. Let me add this to our Git project quickly. Git add everything. Git add commits. Completed filter functionality. Okay, that's saved. I'll go git push origin, measure. All right, so that should be committed. I'll open up a pull request on that challenge later. But let's actually get to functional. So if I do git checkout functional version. What's the command for that? Git checkout.
Does it already exist? Or are you trying to make a functional version?
Does it exist? I don't. It says does not match.
I think you might need a /b to create the branch then.
Gotcha. My Git syntax is not the best. I'm just gonna call it funver. All right, so funver is our functional version. Let's get to change some code here. All right, so the biggest part here is gonna be using that use effect hook and so using our component did mount, component did update methods. So let's actually take what we had for our section page and let's update that, and then we'll change it for our search feature. So here, let's get to it. Again, getting more repetitions here. You're not gonna be doing this really in the real world. Like if you got a job that where your only job is to convert class-based components to functional-based components, probably not the funnest job, but we just wanna get practice so we understand both syntax. So here I'm going to do function section page. We don't need to extend this. We do want to take in some props maybe. So we'll do props. State. How do we get state values? Well, instead of creating a dictionary, we do const articles, set articles, and then we use what's the hook we use?
Set state.
Use state.
Or, yeah, you state. Sorry.
If you're getting confused, I definitely had to think about it, but here articles doesn't have to be named correctly, but we want to. All right, articles use state, initial value will be empty list, just copying this and converting it to a functional based component. So that looks good. We get rid of that, but we need to import the use state hook. So I'll do that now before I forget. So use state, there we go. All right, now we need to convert our methods. So here we need const. Let's go before. I think so. What's going on here? So async const. All right, maybe let's look up async function JavaScript. Oh, we need a function keyword. Duh. So async function. Those go together. Not sure why that's right. Okay. So don't need to change anything here aside from the this. Instead of that, we have props, because props is coming in as a parameter to this function. So let's get rid of that. We don't want to call set state in this manner. Instead, we want to call set articles. Again, this is the name of the function we gave it. We can call this whatever we want. I can call it set A, and then we'll use set A here. As long as we remember what set A actually means. So I want to make it clear that these names don't have to match, but I usually want to make match. I don't see an argument why you wouldn't want them to. Here we get section. Okay, I don't think I missed anything there. Got rid of the this items and then calling the appropriate setter. So it looks good. All right, life cycles. This is the hardest part of going to function-based components is we got to use something called use effects. All right, so we don't have access to component did mount or component did update. They're not going to be called by React because this is a functional-based component. React only does that for class-based components. So we're going to create a use effect. And then again, use effect takes in two parameters. The first one is a function to be called. So that's usually we just do it as an anonymous function. You don't have to, but usually that's convention. And here we want to do two things. So let's see. If you remember from our lecture, empty brackets means this will effectively be component did mount. All right, so if I actually take this right here, these two things are the same thing. The only difference is this is for a functional based component. We'll call update articles one time on the first render. For class-based components, component did mount will be called one time to update. All right, so that's checked. Now we got to do component did update. This one's a little trickier, but we can still do it. So I'm going to do that here. Use effects. And don't worry, I'm going to mention the caveat here. So here we want to do something similar. But we only want this to update when the params change. So we could actually just put in that specific parameter that we want to spy on. In this case, we want to spy on this.props.match.params.section ID. Anything else that changes, this use effect will not be triggered. So it's going to say, okay, if this value changes, update something. If not, I don't care. So this use effect, this particular use effect is only going to care about one thing, if that section ID is changing. And because of that, we don't need to do something like this previously where we were manually checking, hey, does the previous value of section ID match the current one? In that case, that's automatically done by this dependency item. So this dependency array has one value in it, and React is automatically going to check, hey, has it changed? If it does, it's going to execute your use effect function. If not, then it won't actually call it. So let's actually see if that's true. But do you guys remember the one functionality of this? When is this going to get called? How many times will this get called? All right, so the answer is on load, as in on the first render, this use effect will still get called. So if I actually want to show you guys that, let's put a console.log log, and we'll do in use effect for section ID. Right, so let's actually see that once we get this up and running. We can get rid of this. So we achieve the component update, because whenever this value changes, this use effect will fire. And then render, we just need a render method because we're in a function.
Hey, Ankur, did you want to get rid of this keyword in your 2 use effect functions?
I absolutely do. Thank you. Always got one of those. All right, otherwise, I think this should successfully convert.
Line
Yeah,
27.
your component did mount replacements.
Thank you. All right, do a quick scan. Probably could search this file for this, but I think I got them. If not, we'll catch them again. Okay, so we remove the render function. We're just returning what we actually want to render. So that's that. Let's call these effects. And then I like having comment sections. We'll call these states. Okay, so now this should be fully converted to a functional-based component. Again, we don't have to convert everything to a functional-based component. They all class-based components, functional-based components work together, which is usually you want to be consistent. So with that, let's actually see if our page still works. It looks like articles is not being used. State type. Did not catch that. So there's no states. All right, that should be good. Let's see if we broke anything. So I'm gonna go back to my home page, or section page, sorry. All right, looks like my section pages still show me some random articles. They look to be correct. Okay, so I don't think we broke anything. That's task 1, but I did want to show you guys, sorry, if I bring up my console.
You're still calling it, right?
All right, notice what we got in our output. I'm updating the articles in use effect for a section ID, and hey, I'm updating the articles. So we got this printed twice, and where is that being printed from? So this use effect, where's that update articles? Oh, right here. Let's get rid of that. All right, so only thing I want to highlight is this this console log. It's in the use effect for only when I want this to change. I want to react to that changing. So if I refresh, okay, notice I got, hey, in use effect for section ID. So I don't actually want that to happen. But in this case, I do have a kind of a cheat way to fix this, is because I do want update articles to be called on like the component did mount, and I want it to happen on component update for this value. So actually I can kind of just get lucky here and delete this. And now this use effect will both handle the component did mount and the component did update for this particular value. So actually I just need one function here. Let's add that. So will fire on first render and anytime after where that changes. All right, so let's add that comment. So again, to be clear, this can be called in 2 different circumstances. The initial render will force this and call this because that's just the way it works. And then after that point, after the initial render, this use effect will only fire when this value has updated. All right, any questions about using use effects? Again, it's going to take a little while to get used to. It's a lot of stuff going on in one function, but hopefully you guys kind of understand what we're going with here. What questions do you guys have? No questions?
Definitely got to read the documentation, kind of let it stick.
Yeah, the documentation is pretty good for React, so definitely would encourage you to do that. Okay, then let's do our last thing of converting our search page, and then we'll hopefully be done. So if I go to, where was it? Homepage. All right, let's change this quickly to a function-based component. So I'll do function. Hopefully you guys can keep up since we should be getting better at this. All right, we have 2 state values. So let's create 2 states. I'm going to use something called use state. And I already know I'm going to use effects. So I'm going to drop this in here too. All right, use state, use effects. Let's do states here. Do const particles, set particles. It's going to be use state. Initially, it's going to be empty value. And then we have filter text. So same thing, const filter text, set filter text. And that's going to be initialized to empty string, it looks like. All right, so we check this off. State values have been converted. We need some keywords here, async function, update articles, get rid of the this dot state doesn't exist anymore. It's just state values. Set state doesn't exist. So we need to do set articles, right? We're getting new articles here. All right, that was simple enough. Hopefully I didn't miss any thises. All right, so we no longer have component did now.
Typo on line 15.
Many typos. Arctic. Sorry, took me a moment. All right, again.
I before C.
What?
I before C.
Okay.
You got it now.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, so effects. This is where we use effect. So we don't have access to these methods. So instead, we're going to do use effect. Anonymous function, and then dependency array. Initially, I'll go with empty. All right, what do we want to do on component did map? Well, we want to call update articles. Simple enough. And then similar to our section page, we only want to recall or call again update articles when only when the filter text changes. So in this case, I could just take my filter text, which is part of props, which I totally forgot up here. Don't forget your props function. Take some props. Now I could do props dot filter. Sorry, it's not a prop value, it's a state value. Filter text. All right, so now whenever filter text changes, this should be fired. And then also the first time we render this component, we should also call update article. So it looks like both of these are handled. Okay, that seems simple. We have helper methods, handler, and then we have our render down here. And we need to change this. Oops, I need to change this too. So this should be set filter text because we don't have set state available to us. Did I forget any thises up here? Nope, looks good. Okay, last thing is render. No longer a function, just returns a value out of this functional component. And voila, that should do it once I capture these thises. Okay, so it took, not too long, a few minutes, but again, more practice will make you guys quicker at it. With that, let's actually make sure we didn't break any functionality. So let's get rid of our console here. Let's refresh. All right, so section pages looks like it's working. Let's go to our home page and test out that filter value. Nope. Always forget a few things. So this needs to be const. And that it. There we go. All right, so now can we still filter? Yep, looks like it's filtering. I type in garbage, I get nothing. I type in a V, finds everything with a V. Notice it's case insensitive. That functionality is coming from, go back to your API, adding this I like thing. So again, that's similar, very similar to SQL when we had that like keyword, which means do a partial match, and the I means case insensitive. So both uppercase and lowercase will be matched by your input. So I could type in all caps and it shouldn't matter. There we go. All right, so that completes my functional changes. So maybe add a down here and just do git add everything, git commit converted section page and home page to functional. All right, obviously I didn't change everything in this. That's gonna be a little tedious. You guys can do it if you want to, but kind of just get practice with it. And so that concludes new site 4. Definitely encourage you guys to do the extended challenges. I think it's a good thought exercise and good chance to actually test out your React a little further from just the practice we got today. So this can be more design oriented than like anything, lifecycle wise, but you guys should be able to do this. I believe in your ability to do it. It's a matter of if you guys want to give it a try or not. So let's see how far you guys get with new site 4, and definitely try those extended challenges if you get to them. Cool. What questions you guys have before you guys are released for your new site 4? Do those lifecycle methods make sense to you? Or are they still kind of foreign? Again, let's go back to our diagram. Looks like I lost my diagram, so we could find it. I just searched for lifecycle React components diagram, and it should be one of the first 2 results. Yep, first result. Again, class-based components, constructor, render, component did mount for the first mounting. Any update can be happen from any props of the parents change or any state change that happens. So again, if you remember, we did both cases here. For our section page, we had a prop value changing. So where can I highlight that? So here, this is a prop value. This is what the parent's passing down. So whenever that changes, when the parent wants to change it or chooses to change it, that's going to trigger a re-render of our section page. So the parent in this case is the router. So the router might change the route, because when you navigate to a new page, it's going to send down some route props to your components. The other case that we did was in our homepage, we had a state value that's changing. So in this case, filter text was one item that's changing. In the same manner, we can react to that. So again, in our class-based component, we had component did update handling that. So anytime something changed, component did update, you can investigate what changed. And component will unmount. We don't use it too often, but that's if you need to clean up any resources. In this case, I don't think there's we need to clean up, but you do have the option to do something before the component is unmounted. Okay, so good luck with new site 4. Make sure you understand sort of the life cycle of a component and how you can use it to achieve what you're looking for. All right. Any last questions?